The 1970s wasn't just a decade. It was a different atmosphere, a different rhythm of life, slower, quieter, and strangely stronger. If you grew up in the 1970s, you grew up in a world that didn't revolve around screens. There were no smartphones lighting up your face at night, no social media feeds shaping your opinions, no endless scrolling stealing your focus. There was only real life, raw, unpredictable, and beautifully simple. You probably remember waking up on a summer morning, eating breakfast quickly, and running outside without a second thought. The neighborhood was your playground. Empty lots became battlefields for imagination. Sidewalks turned into racetracks. Trees became castles. You didn't need virtual reality. Your mind created entire worlds. And here's the rare part. Nobody was supervising every second. Your parents trusted you to figure things out. They didn't hover. They didn't monitor every move. They simply expected you to be home before dark. That trust forced you to develop something many struggle with today, personal responsibility. If you fell off your bike, you got back up. If you argued with a friend, you solved it face to face. There were no group chats to hide behind, no filters to soften your emotions. Conflict was direct. Apologies were real. Forgiveness meant something. That built emotional resilience. You learned early that life doesn't pause for your feelings. It keeps moving, and so did you. Saturday mornings were sacred, but limited. Cartoons came on once a week. If you missed them, there was no replay button. That simple fact taught patience in a way modern convenience never could. You waited, and when the moment came, you appreciated it fully. Waiting was normal in the 70s. You waited for letters in the mail. You waited for film to be developed. You waited for your favorite song to play on the radio, finger hovering over the record button on a cassette player, hoping to capture it before the DJ talked over the intro. That waiting strengthened your ability to delay gratification, a skill that has become rare in an instant everything world. Dinner time wasn't flexible. It wasn't optional. It was expected. The family gathered around a table, no phones buzzing, no notifications interrupting. Conversations happened naturally. You listened to adults speak about real issues. You learned how to hold eye contact. You learned how to express opinions respectfully. That built communication skills rooted in presence. School was different too. Chalkboards instead of smartboards, encyclopedias instead of search engines. If you had a question, you researched it manually. That process required effort. It required concentration. It required time, and because it required effort, knowledge felt earned. You trained your mind to focus deeply instead of skimming endlessly. Your brain developed endurance, the ability to sit with a problem until you solved it. There was no quick answer at your fingertips. There was only persistence. The world around you was shifting, politically, culturally, economically. The oil crisis, rising inflation, changing music, new social movements. You watched society evolve in real time. And unlike today's filtered news cycles, information came slower, heavier, and often without dramatic exaggeration. That environment shaped your world. It taught you to observe before reacting. Neighbors knew each other. Doors were sometimes left unlocked. Communities weren't perfect, but they were connected. If something broke, someone knew how to fix it. If someone struggled, others showed up physically, not digitally. That created loyalty. Friendships weren't measured in likes or followers. They were measured in time spent together, shared secrets, shared adventures, shared consequences. Boredom was common and powerful. When you were bored, you didn't escape into a device. You created something. You built forts. You wrote stories. You explored. Boredom became the birthplace of creativity. And that's another rare trait people from the 1970s often carry. Imagination without dependency. You learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. Silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was normal. Long car rides meant staring out the window, thinking, reflecting, dreaming that built introspection. Today, silence feels threatening to many. But for you, silence was familiar. It was space for thought. Growing up in the 1970s also meant you experienced limits. Stores closed early. TV channels were few. Resources weren't endless. And because options were limited, gratitude came easier. You appreciated what you had. You didn't compare your life to thousands of others online. You compared it to yesterday and hoped tomorrow would be better. That comparison created contentment instead of constant dissatisfaction. Perhaps most importantly, you grew up before life became performative. Moments weren't documented for validation. They were lived fully, without the pressure of capturing proof. Memories existed in your mind, not in cloud storage, that built authenticity. You learned to value real experiences over public approval. You didn't need an audience to enjoy your life, and here's the powerful truth. People who grew up in the 1970s often carry a quiet strength. They don't demand attention. They don't panic when technology fails. They don't crumble when things move slowly. They adapt because they've already lived through massive transformation, from analog to digital, from simplicity to complexity. They understand both worlds. They remember life before constant noise, before endless comparison, before instant everything. And that memory gives them perspective. If you grew up in the 1970s, you likely possess independence that doesn't need applause, patience that doesn't need praise, resilience that doesn't need recognition. You were raised in a time where character was built through experience, not curated online. And in today's fast, loud, distracted world, that kind of foundation is incredibly rare. The 1970s didn't just give you memories. It gave you strength that still lives inside you today. If you were a child or teenager in the 1970s, you didn't just grow up, you evolved alongside a transforming world. The 70s were a bridge between simplicity and modern complexity. You experienced life before technology took over daily existence. And because of that, you developed traits that feel almost rare today. Music, for example, wasn't background noise. It was intentional. You bought vinyl records with saved allowance money. You held the album cover in your hands, studied the artwork, read the lyrics printed inside. You placed the needle carefully and listened not to skip, not to shuffle, but to experience the entire album from beginning to end. That built attention span. It built appreciation. It taught you that good things unfold slowly. You didn't consume music in seconds. You lived inside it, and when you connected to a song, it became part of your identity, not because it was trending, but because it meant something to you personally. Road trips were another classroom of life. Families piled into station wagons with no GPS, no tablets, no streaming services. Just paper maps, snacks, and conversation. Sometimes you got lost, sometimes arguments happened, but those moments required problem solving in real time. There was no quick solution button. You learned how to navigate uncertainty. That built adaptability. You became comfortable not knowing exactly what would happen next. and that comfort with uncertainty became one of your greatest hidden strengths later in life. Because life rarely goes according to plan, growing up in the 70s also meant working early. Many teenagers had part-time jobs at gas stations, diners, grocery stores, or delivering newspapers. You earned money through effort, not digital transactions. You physically felt the value of each dollar. That built discipline, it built work ethic. You understood that progress required time and persistence. There were no overnight success stories flooding your screen. Success was something people built brick by brick. And that mindset shaped you into someone who doesn't expect instant rewards. Community played a powerful role in shaping your character. Block parties weren't unusual. Neighbors knew each other's names. If someone moved in, people introduced themselves in person. If someone struggled, help arrived at the door, not just in words. That environment created loyalty and accountability. If you misbehaved, chances were the whole neighborhood knew before you reached home. That might sound strict, but it built awareness of consequences. Your actions mattered beyond your personal space, and because relationships were face-to-face, you learned to read body language, tone, and emotion deeply. You became emotionally intelligent without realizing it. Friendships were different too. You didn't measure connection by how often someone liked your photo. You measured it by shared time, riding bikes together, hanging out after school, talking for hours on a landline phone, hoping your parents wouldn't need to use it. There was vulnerability in those friendships. You couldn't edit your personality. You showed up as you were. That built authenticity. Another rare trait you likely carry is self-reliance. If something broke, you tried to fix it. If you wanted information, you searched through books. If you wanted to talk to someone, you walked or called. Technology didn't carry your responsibilities. You did. That created mental toughness. And let's talk about boredom, something many try to avoid today. In the 1970s, boredom was common. There weren't endless entertainment options. When you were bored, you created something. You wrote stories, you practiced an instrument, you explored outdoors, you experimented, you imagined. Boredom became fuel for creativity. Today, constant stimulation often blocks imagination. But your generation learned how to sit in stillness and turn it into something meaningful. Growing up in that era also meant witnessing massive cultural shifts, changes in politics, music, fashion, and social norms. You watched society question itself. You saw debates happen without hashtags. You formed opinions through observation and discussion, not viral clips. That built perspective. You understand nuance. You know that issues are rarely black and white, and that awareness makes you calmer during chaos. Another rare trait people from the 1970s often possess is gratitude. You've seen both extremes, a world without digital convenience and a world dominated by it. You know how much effort basic tasks once required. Because of that, you appreciate modern tools without being controlled by them. You don't panic if the Wi-Fi goes out. You don't feel lost without a device in your hand. You know how to function independently. That independence creates quiet confidence. It's not loud. It doesn't demand validation. It simply exists. You don't need to post every achievement. You don't need public applause to feel accomplished. You trust your own progress. And maybe the most powerful trait of all, you understand that happiness isn't found in constant consumption. You remember evenings spent outside until the streetlights turned on. You remember conversations that lasted for hours. You remember earning something and feeling proud because you worked for it. You carry those memories as proof that life doesn't need to be fast to be fulfilling. In a world obsessed with speed, you move with intention. In a world addicted to attention, you value depth. In a world constantly comparing, you remain grounded. If you grew up in the 1970s, you likely built resilience without realizing it. You adapted to change from analog to digital. You witnessed revolutions in culture and technology, and through it all, you kept your core values intact. You became part of a generation that built quiet strength, not flashy, not performative, but deeply rooted. And today, that strength stands out, because rare traits are often formed in ordinary times. And the 1970s, simple, raw, and real, gave you something this modern world quietly searches for. Character that doesn't need to be displayed to be powerful.